Hello YouTubers, it's me, Steven. I just wanted to try something a little different today. Book reviews. Since I've actually been studying the JFK assassination, I decided it would be a good idea to help other people in their research and actually offer some books that you guys could actually work with to try and get to the truth of the matter. But before you actually go into any of the real research, you should probably understand something a little bit about American history and American education. And that's why I'm actually recommending this book, Lies My Teacher Told Me, by James Loewen. In this book it says, Americans have lost touch with their history, and in this thought-provoking book, Professor James Loewen shows why. After surveying 12 leading high school American history texts, he has concluded that not one does a decent job of making American history interesting or memorable. Marred by an embarrassing combination of blind patriotism, mindless optimism, sheer misinformation, and outright lies, these books omit almost all the ambiguity, passion, conflict, and drama of our past. In 10 powerful chapters, Loewen reveals that the United States dropped 3 times as many tons of explosives in Vietnam as it dropped in all theaters of World War II, including Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Ponce de Leon went to Florida mainly to capture Native Americans as slaves for Hispaniola, not to find the mythical fountain of youth. Woodrow Wilson, known as a progressive leader, was in fact a white supremacist who personally vetoed a clause on racial equality in the Covenant of the League of Nations. The first colony to legalize slavery was not Virginia, but Massachusetts. From the truth about Columbus's historic voyages to an honest evaluation of our national leaders, Loewen revives our history, restoring it to the vitality and relevance it truly deserves. So, what does this book actually have to do with essentially what we've been taught about the Kennedy assassination? Well, I'll tell you what. Mainly the idea that Lee Harvey Oswald was the sole assassin of our President John Fitzgerald Kennedy is probably wrong if you actually had taken any time to actually study the facts of the case. So, what should a person start with to get started in this particular research? Well, first you have to have a starting point. You cannot actually have two competing theories about this. It either has to be one or the other. Oswald is either innocent or he isn't. He cannot be both. So, it depends on what your starting point is. If you're going to assume that Oswald is guilty, well, then you might as well just go with what National Geographic or Discovery Channel goes with, or any of the other top authors like Bill O'Reilly and Gerald Posner. In his book, Case Closed, Posner theorizes that basically what the Warren Commission actually concluded, that he was a lone nut and he had nothing going for him, so why not just shoot the president and go down in history? But upon close examination of the footage and all of the other issues with this case, it doesn't exactly add up. Oswald didn't exactly seem very scared or mentally unstable when he was caught. In fact, he seemed very confused. So, where should we start? Well, to the novice assassination researcher, you should review all the footage first. So, what I would start with is this. JFK 3 shots. This particular DVD actually showcases all the footage of the news coverage, but not the assassination itself. And the second part actually deals with the case up until this point in time. So, and it's very unbiased. It has no narration, no nothing. It actually just shows you what happened, and it leaves it up to you, the viewer, to decide what actually took place. So this is actually where you should start. Now comes the fun part. Where do you start with? Well, for one, you would actually have to deal with whether or not Oswald is guilty or innocent. Now let's suppose that you start with he's guilty. You would actually go into any of the other kinds of documentaries. They come out with this every year. I think one of the most recent ones was JFK, The Last Shot by National Geographic, where they're theorizing about where that last bullet went, considering that Oswald only got off 3 shots, but they can't seem to find the other two, the one shot that missed. And they all state that basically the first shot missed. Even the official sources say that. So that's why Arlen Specter came up with the single bullet theory. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's take a look at some other documentaries that deal with the fact that he's innocent. This particular documentary is by Robert Groden. He's a top JFK researcher. He basically has worked on the case since almost since the 60s, and he was actually the first one to actually showcase the Zapruder film on national television with Geraldo Rivera in 1975. This essentially gave us the House Select Committee on Assassinations, which concluded that it was probably that Lee Harvey Oswald was still the sole assassin, but it was probably a conspiracy. Wait a minute. If you're saying that Lee Harvey Oswald did it alone, but there was still a conspiracy, then frankly, we are going to come up to an impasse. So where do we go from here? First, here's another documentary that you can watch for free on YouTube. It's called Evidence of Revision, The Assassination of America. On it, it says, history may be revised even as it is being written. Basically, it's a 6-part documentary containing historical news footage that reveals that the most seminal events in American history have been deeply and purposely misrepresented to the public. Archival footage and interviews provide an in-depth exploration of events ranging from the Kennedy assassinations to the murder of Martin Luther King and the Jonestown Massacre. The information in this documentary proves beyond a doubt that the ubiquitous lone gunman theories are impossible, and reveals that the hidden hand behind the coordinated clandestine manufacturing of modern American history. Evidence of Revision proves once and for all that history has been revised even as it was written. So, where does that bring us? Well, if we're going to continue on that track, that essentially all of these lone gunmen are basically CIA operatives or whatever, where do we go from here? Well, let's actually take a look and highlight one of the real assassins. James Files. Basically, this is the alleged, or actually, the confessed assassin of John F. Kennedy. His name is actually James Sutton, but he changed it to James Files legally. And as you can see, he was about 21 when it all took place. And essentially, he is the confessed assassin who is actually behind the picket fence on the grassy knoll, just as Kennedy's limousine actually came down Elm Street. And basically, he actually came out in 1993 for one interview, and he then came out in 2003 again for another video, or another interview, with that you can purchase through jfkmurdersolved.com. And basically you can get his entire take on the assassination from his perspective. And this particular book is about 600 pages or so, and it basically has all the interviews of both the 1993 and the 2003 interviews, and on top of that it shows you the entire story about how he got away, why he did it, and why he will never be charged. So this is a great book to pick out if you want to get to the truth of the matter, on at least from one of the assassin's perspectives. Okay, where do we go from here? Basically, let's also take a look at one of Robert Grodin's other films, the JFK Assassinations assassination film record. Basically, this particular DVD deals with all of the assassination films collected from the 8mm film cameras that were on the president as his motorcade went down Elm and passed into history. It has the Zapruder film, the Orville Nix film, the Mary Muchmore, and other people who were actually there and have actually been able to collect all the information that proves that essentially Kennedy was not hit by just a lone assassin, because the physics and the mechanics of how his body reacted as soon as he was hit, it doesn't work for whatever reason. Basically, we actually have theorized that there's more points to this, but I tend to agree that essentially there were a lot more gunmen in Dealey Plaza than what the official government record states. Okay, so where do we go from here? Well, here's another good book to check out if you want to become a serious researcher. JFK's Encyclopedia. Who's Who in the JFK Assassination. An A to Z encyclopedia. Information on more than 1,400 victims, witnesses, law enforcement officials, and investigators. So there's a huge volume of people right here that you need to check out. It basically is a encyclopedia of who's who in the JFK assassination, including all the major players, all the suspects, and essentially it doesn't actually come with that conclusion that Oswald did it alone. This book is actually quite thick, as you can see. So there's got to be more than just one man, because essentially why would we still be talking about it today? All right. Another book to actually check out that was actually published in the 80s, and the author Jim Marrs hasn't really changed his conclusions, and these were conclusions that he actually came up with in the 1970s. So let's take a look. This is one of his magnum opuses, Crossfire, The Plot That Killed Kennedy. As you can see, it was a book that actually was used as a template for the JFK movie, and it actually goes through all the whole mechanics and all of the issues concerning what went on that day, what led Lee Harvey Oswald and our President John F. Kennedy up until that point. And now it's important to also understand that basically most books that deal with the lone gunman theory will fail to actually talk about JFK's presidency and his issues with the CIA, the Federal Reserve, and all of the military-industrial complex that was essentially him as more or less a puppet when he was trying to be the leader that the American people elected him to be. But what Jim Marrs does is he actually goes through all of that. He actually talks about basically JFK's doings and Lee Harvey Oswald's doings during the last 3 years of their lives, which starts around 1960 and goes all the way up to 1963, where both men regrettably lost their lives to the conspiracy. As you can see, this book is about the same length as the other ones, but this actually has some really good stuff in it, and it was published in the 1980s, and considering all the information that we've gotten since then, it actually holds up pretty darn well from what I understand. So check this one out. Now let's go on to some of the more recent books. Okay, this is Me and Lee by Judith Very Baker. Great work, Judith. You're number one. You're doing exactly what Lee wanted. Basically, this talks about Lee Harvey Oswald's activities in New Orleans over the summer of '63. What was he doing in New Orleans? Who was he working for? And this is actually a memoir from Judith Very Baker, his girlfriend. And she is also trying to get the word out that Lee is innocent. And you can basically go to her Facebook page and look her up, and so forth. And basically you can also get all the information from various websites supporting her, and essentially she also tells everyone, go get this book before it's gone, because this actually explains a lot. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the more other ones. Mark Lane. My last word, my indictment of the CIA and the murder of JFK. Mark Lane was worked on JFK's campaign in 1963. Actually, 1960, excuse me. He basically was the first one to also pioneer the whole alternative view of JFK's assassination, because essentially he could sense that something was actually wrong with the official government report once it came out. So in 1966 he came out with the film A Rush to Judgment, and subsequently his book. And in it he actually has documentaries on certain people that are now deceased and have actually been very valuable to people who are in the research community and who are newcomers. So shout out to Mark Lane for doing all of this work. I think JFK would be very proud of you. Okay. Another recent book is Dr. Mary's Monkey. This one also picks up the other half of Judith Baker's story with regards to what Lee Harvey Oswald was doing in New Orleans over the summer of '63. This actually highlights the actual work both Judith Baker and Lee Harvey Oswald were doing with regards to basically a cancer-causing monkey virus. And basically it also has some very good information about what is going on today, so I would definitely recommend that you check this one out as well. Okay, what else is there? Okay. 4 Days in November. Basically, this is all the newspaper articles published by the New York Times over the 4-day period. And basically, as you can see, that it's very thick. And it also states that in its first initial reports, it basically states that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lousy shot. And this is from the official reports. And it also covers a lot of what people were feeling back then, how the nation felt out of this entire shock, but it also does a lot of things that basically do not exactly paint but it also tries to back up the lone assassin theory. Pretty much right from the get-go, it was only him and him alone. So this is exactly the dark side talking right here. So basically, the people that also assassinated JFK also own the newspapers, so they can pretty much control the message as well as the messenger. So what else is there? Okay. Here's another good DVD. JFK 24 Hours After by the History Channel. Interestingly enough, this particular DVD is really about more or less things from Lyndon Baines Johnson's perspective. And in a way, if you subscribe to the theory that Lyndon Baines Johnson did it, basically this will also back up that theory, because essentially it also highlights a lot of the things that LBJ did while in Dallas and after the fact. He actually threw out Jackie pretty much the day of the funeral. So basically, and he also called JFK's mother, Ethel Rose Kennedy, while on board the plane taking her son's body back to Washington, of which he was also, according to a lot of researchers, really the one responsible. So that's pretty darn sick, if you ask me. Anyway, There's also some interesting picture books, and I think this will probably be the last one to actually check out on this subject. The Killing of a President by Robert Groden. This is actually another particular project by Robert Groden, who also did this. Basically, this is about the entire assassination photo record that has all the photographs that deal with the motorcade and all of the issues that JFK was dealing with in during his presidency, and subsequently led him to Dallas. Unfortunately, the quality of the photographs is kind of not HD quality, since this particular book was made in 1993, and the picture quality on the films, on the DVDs that he produced, aren't really necessarily the best quality. And he's kind of done it on a shoestring budget. But the thing is, they're actually a lot more accurate than most of the National Geographic or Discovery Channel fanfare that we're so commonly used to. So, anyway, basically that's about it for my JFK collection. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that you also know that we're all going to be going to Dealey Plaza in 2013, November 2013, to actually demand justice for the president and Lee Harvey Oswald, because essentially the lies have gone on long enough. And Judith, you're number one. Keep doing what you're doing, and God bless you. Lee and JFK would be proud, and God bless all the researchers that have actually done the work and not bought into the whole government cover story about this. Okay, I'll see you later, guys. Thanks. Hello, YouTubers. It's me, Steven. I just wanted to try something a little different today. Book reviews. Since I've actually been studying the JFK assassination, I decided it would be a good idea to help other people in their research and actually offer some books that you guys could actually work with to try and get to the truth of the matter. But before you actually chapters, Lowen reveals that the United States dropped 3 times as many tons of explosives in Vietnam as it dropped in all theaters of World War II, including Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Ponce de Leon went to Florida mainly to capture Native Americans as slaves for Hispaniola, not to find the mythical fountain of youth. Woodrow Wilson, known as go into any of the real research, you should probably understand something a little bit about American history and American education. That's why I'm actually recommending this book, Lies My Teacher Told Me, by James Lowen. In this book it says, Americans have lost touch with their history, and in this thought-provoking book, Professor James Lowen shows why. After his surveying as a progressive leader, was in fact a white supremacist who personally vetoed a clause on racial equality in the Covenant of the League of Nations. The first colony to legalize slavery was not Virginia, but Massachusetts. From the truth about Columbus's historic voyages to an honest evaluation of our national leaders, Lowen revives our history, restoring it to the Viking 12 leading high school American history texts. He has concluded that not one does a decent job of making American history interesting or memorable. Marred by an embarrassing combination of blind patriotism, mindless optimism, sheer misinformation, and outright lies, these books omit almost all the ambiguity, passion, conflict, and drama of our past. In 10 powerful